The large metal doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep sound that echoed through the huge room. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked inside wearing his best blue uniform. His black shoes clicked on the cold floor as he moved toward the center table. The room was filled with creatures from many different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like giant insects. The Zephyrians sat on the far side of the table. They were tall and thin with hard shells covering their bodies. Their heads looked like those of giant ants with big black eyes and sharp teeth that clicked when they talked. Their leader, Admiral Crixtal, watched Morrison with those dark eyes. The Zephyrian's forearms moved slowly as he arranged papers on the table. Morrison sat down and placed his hands flat on the smooth surface. The treaty papers were already there, waiting for his signature. 3 years of war had led to this moment. 3 years of human ships burning in space. 3 years of colonies attacked and people killed. Now it was time to end it, but not the way everyone thought. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park stood behind Morrison's chair. She was young with short, brown hair and sharp green eyes. She leaned down and whispered very quietly in his ear. "Sir, our teams are ready. The deep space units are in position." Morrison nodded just a little bit. No one else in the room could see the small movement. The other aliens thought humans were giving up. They thought Earth was too weak to keep fighting. They were wrong about that, but Morrison was happy to let them think it. Admiral Crixtal stood up. His voice was high and sharp like metal scraping against stone. "The war ends today. Humans fought well, but now they see the truth. Terra will stay in its small space. No more expansion, no more fighting. This is good for all." The other aliens in the room made different sounds of agreement. Some growled, others chirped, and a few made clicking noises with their teeth. They all thought the same thing. Humans were done. Earth would stay quiet and small while the rest of the galaxy moved forward. Morrison picked up the special pen and signed his name on the treaty. The ink was still wet when he looked up at Crixtal. "The Terran Federation agrees to these terms. We want peace more than anything else." But Morrison's eyes were cold when he said those words. Lisa Park saw the look and almost smiled. She knew what was really happening. While everyone watched the treaty signing, human ships were moving through dark space. While aliens celebrated their victory, human workers were building new weapons in hidden places. Far away on the moon, Dr. Richard Cole stood in his secret laboratory. The room was deep underground where no alien spy could find it. Screens covered, the walls showing pictures of new machines and weapons. Cole was an old man with white hair and tired eyes, but his mind was still sharp. Captain Amy Watson walked up to him carrying a thick folder of papers. She was tall with red hair tied back in a tight knot. Her uniform was clean and pressed even though she had been working for 18 hours straight. "How long until we finish the new weapon?" Cole asked her. 6 months, maybe 7, Watson said. "The power source is the hard part. We need something the aliens have never seen before." Cole nodded and looked at the biggest screen on the wall. It showed a picture of something that looked like a giant metal ball covered in sharp spikes. "The Zephyrians think we are weak now. They think signing the treaty means we give up. They do not understand humans at all." Watson looked at the same screen. "They will learn soon enough." Back in the council chamber, the ceremony was ending. Aliens from different worlds came up to shake Morrison's hand or touch him with whatever they used instead of hands. They all said the same things about peace and working together. Morrison smiled and said the right words back to them. Crixtal was the last to approach. He moved on 6 thin legs that made soft tapping sounds on the floor. When he reached Morrison, he extended one of his 4 arms. His skin felt cold and hard like touching a rock. "Humans are smart to accept peace," Crixtal said. "War brings only death. Better to live small and quiet than to die fighting." Morrison shook the alien's hand and looked right into those big black eyes. "You are right, Admiral. Death is something we want to avoid. For everyone." Something in Morrison's voice made Crixtal pause. The Zephyrian's head tilted to one side like he was trying to understand something, but the moment passed and he pulled his hand away. After the ceremony ended, Morrison and Park walked back to their ship. The hallways of the space station were long and curved. Other aliens passed them going different directions. Some nodded in respect, others just stared. When they reached their ship, Park finally spoke in a normal voice. Do you think they believed it? Morrison stopped at the door to his cabin. They believed what they wanted to believe, that humans are weak, that Earth will stay quiet, that the war is really over. And the truth? Morrison's smile was not kind. The truth is that humans do not forgive. We do not forget. And we never, ever give up. The Zephyrians think they won this war. They will learn that the war has not even started yet. He went into his cabin and closed the door. Park stood in the hallway for a moment, then walked to the communication room. She had calls to make and messages to send. The treaty was signed, but the real work was just beginning. In space stations hidden in asteroid fields, human engineers were working day and night. In secret bases on distant moons, soldiers trained with new weapons. In laboratories buried deep underground, scientists created things that would change everything. The aliens thought the treaty meant peace. They were wrong. The treaty was just the first step in a much larger plan. Humans had learned something important during the war. Sometimes the best way to win is to let your enemy think they have already won. The galaxy would learn this lesson soon enough. 18 months had passed since the treaty was signed. The galaxy had settled into a new routine, but it was not a comfortable one. The Zephyrian Empire was growing bigger every day. They took over small planets and made their people into slaves. They grabbed resources from weaker species and called it trade. The other aliens in the galaxy watched and did nothing because they were afraid. Admiral Ben Crawford stood on the bridge of his ship, the Valiant. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from the old war. The bridge was dark except for the blue light from the computer screens. Outside the windows, stars moved slowly past as the ship traveled through space. Commander Kate Phillips walked up to him carrying a thick folder of papers. She was young but smart, with black hair cut short like a soldier. Her uniform was clean and pressed, but her eyes looked tired from too many long days of work. The Zephyrians took 3 more systems this month, she said quietly. The Altarian people are asking if they can come to human space. Their planet is gone. The bugs destroyed everything. Crawford took the folder and looked at the pictures inside. Burned cities, empty space where planets used to be, ships full of scared families with nowhere to go. His jaw got tight with anger, but his voice stayed calm. What about our preparations? Phillips smiled for the first time in weeks. Project Thunderstrike is ahead of schedule. General Adams says all our hidden fleets are ready. The new weapons are installed and tested. The Zephyrians still think our ships are old and weak. Crawford nodded and looked back at the stars. The Zephyrians had monitoring stations everywhere watching human space. They thought they were keeping humans trapped. They did not know that humans had been building things in places where no one could see. Far away on the Zephyrian homeworld of Ketra Prime, war leader Vextor sat in his command center. The room was dark and warm, the way his people liked it. The walls were covered with screens showing different parts of the galaxy. Red dots marked Zephyrian ships. Blue dots showed human positions. Green dots were the neutral worlds that had not been conquered yet. Vextor was old for a Zephyrian. His shell was darker than most, and one of his arms had been replaced with a metal one after a battle long ago. He moved slowly, but his mind was still sharp. His assistant, scout leader Ziknal, approached with the daily reports. The humans are still quiet, Ziknal said. They are building factories and mines. No new warships. No military exercises. Their fleet numbers are exactly what the treaty allows. Vextor looked at a screen showing human space. It seemed so small compared to the growing Zephyrian Empire. What kind of factories? Metal processing, electronics, food production, all civilian purposes. Nothing that looks dangerous. But Vextor had fought humans before. He remembered how they thought differently from other species. Most aliens either attacked right away or gave up completely. Humans did something else. They planned. They waited. They prepared. Keep watching them, he ordered. Humans are never as simple as they appear. On a hidden asteroid base called Station 7, Captain Amy Watson was working on something that would change everything. The asteroid looked empty from the outside, just another rock floating in space. But inside it was full of laboratories and factories. Hundreds of human workers moved through the tunnels, building weapons that no alien had ever seen. Watson stood in the main laboratory looking at a huge machine. It was shaped like a metal egg with cables and wires covering every surface. Lights blinked in patterns that hurt to look at. The machine hummed with power that made the air feel thick and strange. Dr. Richard Cole walked up beside her. He was older now, with more white in his hair, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "How many of these can we build?" 50 so far, Watson said. "Maybe 100 by the time we need them. Each one can cover a whole star system. And the Zephyrians will not see it coming?" Watson smiled. It was not a nice smile. Their minds are all connected. They think together, move together, fight together. That makes them strong. But it also makes them weak. One pulse from this machine, and their whole network falls apart. They will be alone in their own heads for the first time in their lives. Cole nodded. The neural disruption matrix was the most important weapon humans had ever built. It would not kill the Zephyrians, but it would do something worse. It would take away the thing that made them dangerous. Back on Earth, President Helen Burke sat in her office reading reports from all over human space. The reports told the same story everywhere. Humans were ready. The hidden fleets were in position. The secret weapons were finished. All they needed was the right moment. Her assistant, Daniel White, came into the office carrying more papers. He was a thin man with worried eyes who had worked for 3 presidents. He set the papers on her desk and sat down. The Zephyrians attacked. "Another refugee ship yesterday," he said. 200 civilians killed. The other species are starting to ask questions about why we do not help." Burke put down her reports and looked out the window at the city below. People walked on the streets, went to work, lived their lives. They trusted her to keep them safe. The treaty had bought them time, but it had also cost lives. How long until we are completely ready? General Adams says 2 more months, maybe 3. Burke stood up and walked to the window. "Every day we wait, more innocent people die. But if we move too soon, we lose everything." White nodded. He understood the terrible choice she had to make. Move too fast and the plan would fail. Wait too long and too many people would suffer. "The Zephyrians think time is on their side," Burke said. "They think every day makes them stronger and us weaker. They are wrong about that. Every day we get more ready. Every day our weapons get better. Every day more species see what the bugs really are." She turned away from the window and looked at White. "Send a message to Admiral Crawford. Tell him to be patient just a little longer. The right moment is coming soon." Across the galaxy, human ships moved through dark space where no one could see them. In asteroid bases and hidden stations, weapons were loaded and systems were tested. On Earth and its colonies, people went about their normal lives, not knowing that their leaders were preparing for the biggest war in galactic history. The Zephyrians kept expanding, kept taking what they wanted, kept killing anyone who got in their way. They thought the treaty had made them safe from human revenge. They thought wrong. The waiting game was almost over. The alarm went off at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Captain Rob Turner was sleeping in his quarters on the space station Harmony when the red lights started flashing. He rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform, knowing that emergency alarms meant something very bad had happened. In the command center, officers were running between computer stations. The main screen showed a ship floating dead in space. It was the merchant vessel New Horizon, a big cargo ship that carried medical supplies to human colonies, but now it was broken in half, with pieces floating around it like scattered toys. Commander Sarah Brooks met Turner at the door. Her face was white with shock, and her hands were shaking. "Sir, we got the emergency signal 20 minutes ago. The New Horizon was attacked near the Haven 7 system. Zephyrian raiders hit them with plasma cannons." Turner looked at the screen and felt his stomach turn cold. "Survivors?" "None, sir. 127 people dead. 31 of them were children going to the new colony school." The words hit Turner like a punch to the chest. Children. The Zephyrians had killed children and called it protecting their territory. The New Horizon had been carrying medicine to sick people, nothing more. But the bugs had destroyed it anyway. On Earth, President Helen Burke was pulled from her sleep by a call from her security chief. She sat up in bed and answered the phone, already knowing that her life was about to change forever. "Madam President, we have a situation. The Zephyrians just attacked one of our medical ships. Everyone aboard is dead." Burke got dressed quickly and went to the White House Situation Room. The room was underground with thick walls and no windows. Maps and screens covered every surface. Her advisors were already there, looking tired and angry. General Steve Adams stood at the front of the room. He was a tall man with a gray beard and eyes like pieces of ice. He had been planning for this day since the treaty was signed. Now the day had finally come. "The attack happened at Dardo 247 hours," Adams said. "The New Horizon was in neutral space following all treaty rules. The Zephyrians attacked without warning and left no survivors." Burke sat down at the big table in the center of the room. Around her were the most important people in the human government: Secretary of Defense Carol Martinez, CIA Director Paul Jackson, Admiral Crawford, who had flown in from his ship. They all looked at her, waiting for her decision. "What do we know about the attackers?" "3 Zephyrian warships," Adams said. "They claimed the New Horizon was carrying weapons. We have the full communication record. The ship's captain tried to explain they only had medical supplies, but the bugs did not listen." Burke closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. She thought about the children who had died for no reason except that they were human. When she opened her eyes, they were hard as stone. "How long until we can be ready for Operation Starfall?" Adams smiled for the first time in months. "We have been ready for 6 weeks, Madam President. We were just waiting for you to give the order." The next morning, Burke stood before an emergency meeting of the Terran Senate. The big room was packed with senators from every human colony. Some were angry, some were scared, but all of them wanted to know what she planned to do. "Fellow senators," Burke began, "yesterday the Zephyrians showed us their true face. They attacked a medical ship carrying supplies to our colonies. They killed 127 innocent people, including 31 children. The room erupted in angry voices. Senators stood up and shouted about revenge and justice. Senator Carl Davis from the Mars colony raised his hand for quiet. "Madam President, are we talking about war? Are we prepared for what that means?" Burke looked at him with steady eyes. "Senator, we have been prepared since the day we signed that treaty. The Zephyrians thought it meant we were weak. They thought wrong." In the secret bunker beneath the Pentagon, General Adams was briefing the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The room was filled with the most important military leaders in human space. They sat around a table looking at holographic displays that showed the entire galaxy. "Operation Starfall has been in development for 2 years," Adams said. "We have stealth fleets, positioned in 17 Zephyrian systems. Our quantum communication network is fully operational. Most importantly, we have completed the neural disruption matrix." Admiral Susan Taylor leaned forward. She was in charge of the space fleet and had fought the Zephyrians before. "Remind me how this weapon works." "The Zephyrians have a hive mind," Adams explained. "They think together, act together, fight together. It makes them very dangerous when they work as a team. But if we break that connection, they become just individual insects with no way to coordinate." General Patricia Hayes, who led the Marine Corps, nodded approvingly. "So we turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness." "Exactly. One pulse from our device and their entire command structure collapses. Their ships will not be able to work together. Their ground forces will be confused and lost. It will be like fighting a swarm of bees after you destroy their hive." The military leaders looked at the tactical displays showing Zephyrian positions. Red dots marked their major bases and fleets. Blue lines showed human attack routes. Green circles marked the positions of the neural disruption devices. "When do we begin?" asked Admiral Taylor. Adams looked at his watch. "The President will address the nation in 2 hours. After that, we strike. The Zephyrians have had 18 months to enjoy their victory. Time to show them what defeat really looks like. Back in the Oval Office, President Burke was writing her speech. The words came slowly because she knew they would change everything. Outside her window, she could see people walking in the park, living their normal lives. Soon, those lives would be different. Her chief of staff, Daniel White, came into the room. "Madam President, the speech is scheduled for 8 o'clock. All the networks will carry it live." Burke finished writing and set down her pen. "Daniel, do you think we are doing the right thing?" White sat down across from her. "Those children on the new horizon did not deserve to die. The Zephyrians need to learn that there are consequences for their actions." Burke nodded. "The other species think humans are weak because we tried to make peace. Tonight, they will learn that we are not weak. We are patient. There is a big difference." She stood up and walked to the window. In a few hours, human fleets would attack Zephyrian positions across the galaxy. The war that everyone thought was over would begin again. But this time it would end very differently. The Zephyrians thought they had won when they forced humans to sign the treaty. They thought they were safe when human fleets stayed in their own space. They thought they could keep expanding and taking whatever they wanted. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. The attack began at exactly 3 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. Across 17 star systems, human ships appeared out of nowhere like ghosts coming back from the dead. They had been hiding in dark space for months, waiting for this moment. Captain Eric Stone stood on the bridge of his stealth destroyer Ghost Runner. The ship was painted black and covered with special material that made it invisible to enemy sensors. For 6 hours they had been floating above the Zephyrian military base on Zerion 4, watching and waiting. "All ships, this is Admiral Crawford," came the voice over the communication system. "Operation Starfall is now active. Show them what happens when you kill our children." Stone looked at his crew. They were young men and women who had trained for 2 years for this moment. Their faces were hard with anger and determination. The pictures of the dead children from the new horizon were posted on the wall where everyone could see them. "Fire the neural disruption matrix," Stone ordered. Lieutenant Mike Chen pressed a button on his control panel. A pulse of energy shot out from the Ghost Runner, invisible but more powerful than any weapon ever built. It traveled at the speed of light toward the planet below. On Zerion 4, Zephyrian War Commander Thek Vor was in his command center when the pulse hit. For his entire life, he had been connected to thousands of other minds. He could feel their thoughts, share their knowledge, coordinate with them perfectly. Suddenly, all of that was gone. The silence in his head was deafening. For the first time in 40 years, Thek Vor was alone with his own thoughts. Around him, other Zephyrians were making confused, clicking sounds. They stumbled around like they were drunk, not knowing what to do without the hive mind to guide them. "What is happening?" Thek Vor said out loud, but his voice sounded strange to him. He had never heard himself speak without the background noise of other minds. The answer came in the form of plasma cannon fire from the human ships above. The Ghost Runner and 12 other destroyers opened fire on the Zephyrian base. Buildings exploded in bright flashes of light. Ships trying to take off were shot down before they could leave the ground. Captain Julie Morgan commanded the battlecruiser Defiance as it attacked the shipyards orbiting Tau Ceti. The Zephyrian fleet there was huge, with over 200 warships of different sizes. But without their hive mind connection, they could not work together. "Target their command ships first," Morgan told her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dave Wilson. "Without leaders, the rest will run away like scared animals." The Defiance fired its main guns at a massive Zephyrian dreadnought. The enemy ship tried to return fire, but its shots went wild. The Zephyrian gunners could not coordinate their attacks without the mental link they had always depended on. One by one, the Zephyrian ships were destroyed or damaged so badly they could not fight. Some tried to escape, but human ships were waiting for them. The trap had been planned perfectly. On the Zephyrian homeworld of Ketra Prime, war leader Vex Tor felt the pulse hit like a hammer blow to his mind. He was in his private chambers when the connection to his people was suddenly cut. The old warrior fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the silence in his head. His aide Ziknal burst into the room. The younger Zephyrian was making panicked clicking sounds and waving his arms around wildly. "War leader, something is wrong. The network is gone. I cannot feel anyone." Vextor struggled to his feet. Without the hive mind, everything seemed harder. Walking, thinking, even breathing felt strange and difficult. "Get to the command center," he managed to say. "We must warn the fleet." But it was too late. Commander Alex Turner and his special operations team had already infiltrated the Queen's palace. They moved through the halls like shadows, taking out guards who could no longer coordinate with each other. The Zephyrian soldiers stumbled around in confusion, unable to call for help or work together. Turner reached the central command room where the Queen's consciousness was kept in a massive computer system. The room was filled with glowing cables and pulsing lights. This was the heart of the Zephyrian hive mind, the place where all their thoughts came together. "Plant the charges," Turner told his team. "Make sure this thing never works again." Sergeant Lisa Brown placed explosive devices around the computer core while Private Kevin Lee kept watch at the door. They had trained for this mission in secret for 8 months. Every move was practiced and perfect. The explosion that followed could be seen from space. The Queen's Palace, the most important building on the Zephyrian home world, was reduced to burning rubble in seconds. With it died the central control system that had connected every Zephyrian mind for thousands of years. Back on Earth, President Burke watched the tactical displays in the Situation Room. Red dots representing Zephyrian forces were disappearing from the screen one by one. Her military advisors gave her constant updates on the battle's progress. 17 major installations destroyed in the first hour, reported Daniel White. The Zephyrian response fleets are scattered and confused. They are trying to retreat to defensive positions, but our intelligence network knows where every ship is located. General Adams pointed to a large screen showing the battle around Ketra Prime. The Queen's Palace is destroyed. Without their central command, the remaining Zephyrian forces have no way to organize a counterattack. Burke nodded but did not smile. She felt no joy in the destruction, only grim satisfaction that justice was being served. "What about civilian casualties?" "Minimal, Madam President. Our forces are targeting only military installations and government buildings. We are not like the Zephyrians. We do not kill innocent people." Captain Stone watched from the Ghost Runner as the last Zephyrian ship on Zerion 4 was destroyed. The battle had lasted only 4 hours, but it felt like years. His crew cheered as enemy explosions lit up the sky, but Stone remained quiet. "Sir, should we pursue the ships that escaped?" asked Lieutenant Chen. "No need," Stone replied. "Where can they go? Every major Zephyrian base is under attack. Their fleets are broken. Their command structure is gone. Those few ships that got away will not be a threat to anyone." The communication system crackled to life again. "All human forces, this is Admiral Crawford. Phase 1 of Operation Starfall is complete. Casualty reports show minimal losses on our side. The enemy is in full retreat." Across the galaxy, human crews celebrated their victory. But they also remembered why they were fighting: the children on the new horizon, the colonies that had been destroyed, the innocent people who had died because the Zephyrians thought they could do whatever they wanted. On Ketra Prime, War Leader Vextor stood in the ruins of his command center. Half the building had been destroyed by human bombs. The other half was on fire. Around him, his surviving officers clicked and chittered in confusion, unable to understand what had happened. "How did they hide so many ships?" asked Zignal. "How did they know exactly where to strike?" Vextor looked at the burning sky above his world. Human ships flew overhead in perfect formation, their weapons ready but not firing. They had won, and now they were showing mercy that the Zephyrians had never shown to others. "We underestimated them," Vextor said quietly. "We thought the treaty made us safe. We thought humans were weak because they wanted peace. We were wrong about everything. The war that everyone thought had ended 2 years ago was now truly over. But this time, the winners and losers were very different from what anyone had expected. 6 weeks after the attack began, the war was completely over. The Zephyrian Empire that had once controlled 43 star systems was now reduced to their homeworld and 2 small colonies. The other species in the galaxy watched in amazement as the most powerful military force they had ever known was defeated in less than 2 months. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the same council chamber where he had signed the first treaty. But everything was different now. The room was full of representatives from dozens of species who had suffered under Zephyrian rule. They looked at Morrison with respect and hope instead of pity. The Altarians were there, the bird-like people, whose planet had been destroyed, the Corvan traders who had lost their shipping routes, the peaceful Malori whose colonies had been enslaved. All of them had come to see what the humans would do with their victory. Morrison placed a thick document on the center table. The Terran. Federation proposes a new galactic charter. This agreement will be based on mutual respect, real peace, and the protection of all civilian populations. Any species that breaks these rules will face the combined response of the Alliance. The room was quiet as different species read the document. Unlike the old treaty, this one was fair to everyone. It created trade routes that helped smaller species. It set up courts to settle disputes without war. Most importantly, it made it clear that attacking innocent people would never be tolerated again. In the corner of the room sat the only Zephyrian representative. Kixtel was young, barely an adult by his species standards. He had never known the hive-mind connection because he was born after the neural disruption matrix destroyed their mental network. Without the collective consciousness, he had learned to think for himself. "My people accept these terms," Kixtel said in broken galactic standard language. "We wish only to survive and learn to live differently. The old ways brought only death and pain." Morrison nodded to the young Zephyrian. "Your people will be given the chance to rebuild, but they will be watched closely. Trust must be earned back slowly." On Earth, President Helen Burke gave her final speech about the war to the human people. She stood in the rose garden behind the White House with flowers blooming around her. The setting was peaceful, but her words were strong. "Some people said we should have attacked first," Burke told. "The cameras. They said the peace treaty was a mistake, but patience has its own kind of strength. We used those 2 years to prepare, to build alliances, and to create the tools we needed for complete victory." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "The Zephyrians thought our willingness to talk made us weak. They learned too late that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who chooses when and how to fight." Behind her, military advisors nodded in agreement. General Adams had been promoted to Secretary of Defense. Admiral Crawford was now Supreme Commander of all human forces. They had proven that humans could be both peaceful and deadly when the situation required it. In his new office at Terran Defense Headquarters, Admiral Crawford was writing the military doctrine that would guide humanity's role in the galaxy. His first rule was simple but powerful. Peace through strength, vigilance through preparation, and justice through action. The doctrine made it clear that humans would always prefer to solve problems with words rather than weapons. But it also promised swift and overwhelming force against anyone who threatened innocent lives. The galaxy had learned that humans meant what they said. Captain Eric Stone, now promoted to Admiral, was in charge of the new Galactic Peace Enforcement fleet. His ships patrolled space lanes that had once been controlled by Zephyrian pirates. Trade flowed freely for the first time in decades. Small species could travel without fear of being attacked or enslaved. "It feels strange," Stone told his second-in-command, Captain Lisa Brown. 2 years ago we were hiding in asteroid fields preparing for war. Now we are keeping the peace." Brown looked at the star charts showing their patrol routes. The galaxy needed someone strong enough to enforce the rules, but wise enough not to abuse that power. Turns out that someone was us. On the former Zephyrian colony world of Nexus 7, human engineers were helping rebuild cities that had been damaged in the war. The local population, a species of blue-skinned humanoids called the Veltari, watched in amazement as their destroyed homes were replaced with better buildings. Construction foreman Tom Wilson directed his crews as they installed new water systems and power generators. The Veltari had been slaves under Zephyrian rule, forced to mine crystals for their masters. Now they were free to build their own society. "Why do you help us?" asked Elder Molterra, the leader of the Veltari people. You won the war. You could take what you want like the bugs did. Wilson wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. Because that is not who we are. Humans believe that everyone deserves a chance to live in peace and build something good. The elder's large purple eyes filled with tears. The old ruler said strength meant taking from others. You show us that true strength means helping others grow strong too. Back on Ketra Prime, the former Zephyrian homeworld was slowly learning to function without the hive mind. War leader Vextor, now calling himself simply Vex, worked with human advisors to create a new government. It was difficult for his people to make decisions as individuals, but they were learning. We were like one giant creature, Vex explained, to Dr. Angela Foster, a human scientist studying Zephyrian society. Now we are millions of separate beings. It is frightening, but also liberating. Dr. Foster nodded as she took notes. Your people have the chance to discover who they are as individuals. That is a gift, even if it does not feel like one right now. Some Zephyrians struggled with the change and became lost without the constant mental connection. But others, especially the younger ones like Kixtel, found that thinking for themselves opened up possibilities they had never imagined. As months passed, other species began to bring their disputes to Earth for mediation. They trusted humans to be fair because humanity had shown wisdom in victory. When the Corvin and Mallory got into a trade disagreement, they asked President Burke to help solve it. When pirates threatened the Altarian refugee ships, they called for human protection. The galaxy was becoming a different place. Trade routes that had been closed for years opened up again. Scientific knowledge was shared freely between species. Art and culture flowed between worlds that had once been enemies. President Burke often stood at her office window, looking up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, human ships were keeping the peace. Human engineers were building better worlds. Human diplomats were preventing wars before they could start. Her chief of staff, Daniel White, came into the office with the daily reports. The Zephyrian rehabilitation program is showing good progress. Crime rates in the former war zones are down 60%. The new trade agreements are bringing prosperity to 12 different species. Burke smiled. And the cost? Lower than anyone expected. When you have enough strength to guarantee peace, you rarely have to use it. That was the lesson the galaxy had learned about humanity. They were willing to fight when necessary, but they preferred to build. They could be patient when patience served justice, but they could also be swift and terrible when innocent people were threatened. The stars seemed brighter now, illuminated by the promise of a galaxy where strength served justice and where those who preyed on the weak would face the measured, patient, and absolutely devastating response of humanity united. The treaty had been just the beginning. Now came the harder work of building something better.